Hi, I'm Gary Striegler, and this is my second video in a series on building a bathroom vanity. This video is going to cover building the plywood box. Now, you can build the box first, or you can build the face frame first. It really doesn't matter, but I usually find myself building the box first. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the joinery around how does the box go together? How do you make that joint? Well, for a lot of years, when I first started, we would do this, make a pretty deep groove in a piece of plywood using a router bit or a dado head on a table saw, and your plywood shelf, that's the bottom, would fit in like that. The depth of this cut is what gave it its strength, and you would just nail through there to tie it together. Now, that worked out pretty well. You were removing a lot of material, and also if you happen to need to bring a shelf in from both sides, that got to be a pretty deep cut. Well, when pocket screws came around, people started doing this, which is basically just a butt joint using the pocket screws. And that makes a very, very strong joint. It's very fast. Now, the only problem with that is the joint's not really concealed. So if you have any sort of imperfection in your cut or whatever, it doesn't really make a great joint. Plus, because pocket screws, when you drive them, tend to move a little bit, move the board a little bit, alignment can be hard. It can be hard to get in the right spot. So what I've started doing is a modification between those. I make a dado that is about an 1/8 inch deep, so that gives me a concealed joint, but then I use some shorter pocket screws, some 1 1/8 pocket screws to give me my strength. So it's a combination of the two. It gives me alignment, a hidden joint, but also the strength of the pocket screws. This is the jig that I used to make that shallow cut, and I've actually already made the cut in this. I'm using a 3/4 inch white side router bit, and the way the jig works simply is the edge of the router rides against this piece, and this edge right here shows me exactly where that dado is going to be. So it's a pretty simple setup. It works great. Once you've got the depth of your bit set, all you have to do is just put that edge where you want the dado, make your cut, and then after you made the cut, just pop the clamps off and set it aside. The bathroom vanity that I'm making has 4 vertical dividers. It has a left-hand end, which is actually going to be a finished end. There's going to be seen a right-hand end where it goes against a wall, and then 2 intermediate partitions that form the sink base. Now, it's really important to know, whether you're going to have a finished end or go against the wall, because I want to design that right-hand end that's going against the wall with the plywood partition be in a little bit from the face frame, and that's so that when we install the cabinet, it's really easy to get that face frame right against the wall, because the face frame is all that's touching, not the plywood side. So I've already made the 2 intermediate partitions, and you can do it several different ways, but I like to have each partition go all the way to the floor, and then I fit the bottom pieces in between. Some people might make the 2 ends go all the way to the floor, and then run a bottom in between it and dado the intermediate partitions into that bottom. But I like to do it, simplest way for me is just make each partition go all the way to the floor and then fit the shelves, the bottoms, in between. Now, there is one trick that I always like to share, and that is how you make sure that you get a left and a right every time that you're doing that. I took a track saw and I've cut this piece to the height that we need it to be. Now, I'm going to put a 1/4 inch plywood back on this cabinet, just like I wanted to make sure that that side on the right hit the wall before the side partition, the face frame hit the wall before the side partition. I'm also going to want my plywood back to be just a little bit in from the back of the cabinet. So I'm going to use a 3/8 inch rebating bit to make a 3/8 by 3/8 rebate on each edge. Once I staple that 1/4 inch plywood into the back, then there's going to be about an extra 1/8 of an inch, so that if there happens to be some little imperfection in the wall, I've got about an 1/8 of an inch of forgiveness, and I've done that for years. It works really well for me. So this router bit is set up to do a 3/8 by 3/8 rebate on the edge, and the trick is as long as I rebate the edges while it's still in one piece, I'm going to always get a left and a right hand side. Now, you might say that sounds pretty simple, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people do this and end up with two lefts or two rights. So all I'm going to do is take this. So that's one side. Spin my piece around. So here's that rebate that my plywood back is going to fit in. Now, the next thing that I would do is take this and split it to the width of my finished cabinet minus the 3/4 inch face frame. That gets all my pieces to size. Oops, I almost skipped a step. So my intermediate partitions, once I've cut this to size, I'm going to measure from this rebate out to the front, and that is the width of my intermediate partitions, because I want that 1/4 inch plywood to go all the way behind each of the intermediate partitions, which gives me a lot of strength. It makes it real simple for that to be a one-piece back. It helps straighten the cabinet out too. Now, there are some other things that I need to do to these partitions. On my left-hand side, I'm going to have just a single drawer, a door, and some shelves. So, yeah, I'm going to be drilling for adjustable shelf pins in that location. I'm also going to be using pocket screws to attach the face frame where I can. On that right-hand side, I could just turn the pocket screws to the inside where the door is, but realistically, I'm probably just going to use some clamps there. But all the rest of the way across, I can use pocket screws to attach everything. Of course, again, I've got to take a jig like this or a machine and drill for my adjustable shelves. And then the other thing that I'll need to do is notch for the toe kick. Now, it is also possible just to go ahead and build a box and independently and then make a toe kick and set it down on top of it. But I generally go ahead and notch it. The only thing you have to remember when you're notching it is just make sure that on the side that's going to be seen, that left-hand side, you don't overcut where it's going to be seen. So that's pretty well all the steps that I need to do to these sides, get ready to put the box together. Now I would go back to my story pole and take the measurements from my story pole for these shelves, these bottoms that fit in between it, and I'd be ready to put the box together. I do need to lightly sand everything because once you put it together, you can't get down the corners to sand it. So I'll just take a random orbit sander, go over it lightly to make sure I get any scratches or anything off, or any place where maybe the router bit's left a little bit of fuzz or anything. But it's a pretty straightforward system. Again, you start out by cross-cutting a piece of plywood with a track saw, or if you have to, a table saw. Then you do all your machining steps, especially on that cabinet that's going to be that piece of plywood that's going to make the left and the right. Make sure you do that while it's in one piece. Rebate the edges, then drill for shelf pins where you do need shelf pins, and drill for your pocket holes that are going to hold the face frame in place. The next thing I'm ready to do is actually put these pieces together to make the box.